When you think of black film classics, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? For some, they think of the 1995 classic Friday. For some, they think of the famous Black Lady Heist movie Set It Off. Boys in the Hood, Juice, or Poetic Justice might come to mind for others. Or it might be Soul Food. Soul Food is a movie that's so of its time and is mostly memorable for people who grew up during the time it came out. The film not only features a classic Boyz II Men song, but also has an interesting cast of characters. Rewatching this movie after not watching it for years made me realize that this movie is one of the few black family dramas that isn't a comedy. It seems like nowadays every black holiday movie has to be a comedy or has to feature Tyler Perry playing 5,000 characters in terrible wigs. Soul Food has some comedy, but it's mostly a drama about a complicated family. The movie, just like the problems in this family, has layers. Because even though there are parts of this movie that frustrate me to no end, it does touch on some interesting topics that aren't really challenged but are still interesting nonetheless. So, what is Soul Food about? Well, it centers around a close knit black family living in Chicago who all gather every Sunday for a family dinner. We are introduced to three sisters, Terry, Maxine, and Ryla, aka Bird, who got that nickname because she, quote, used to be skinny. So I guess we're supposed to pretend like she's not skinny anymore. Terry and her husband Miles are lawyers and make the most money in the family. Maxine, the middle sister, is married to her husband Kenny. They have two children, and she is currently pregnant with their third child. The film is narrated by Maxine's son, Ahmad. The film starts at an after party for Bird and Lem's wedding. What is Lem short for? I have no idea. But Lem is sort of presented as a bum because he isn't exactly bringing any money to the table and has a felony on his record, which is a major obstacle for him being able to get a job. But Bird is supportive of him regardless. Bird's ex, Samuel, shows up and puts money into her bra. Shout out to the writers for giving this character a name that actually represents his personality. You don't even have to hear him talk. You just look at his face and hear his name and you're just like, yeah, that makes sense. During the party, as everyone is dancing and getting drunk, we get a scene of Lem drunkenly dancing with his ex. No one at this party thinks to step in and pull him away or do anything. It's very weird. While in the bathroom, Terry, the oldest of the sisters, complains about how she paid for the entire wedding, and Maxine chastises her for always mentioning how she pays for everything.
You're talking about family, putting them off on me. I'm the one who paid for this wedding.
Terry, why you always gotta let everybody know you pay for everything?
Because I do.
Terry, Maxine, and Bird decide to go in.
And beat that hoe down.
But when they do, Lem is no longer dancing with his ex, but with Mother Joe, aka Big Mama, the family's matriarch.
See, right there. That was just like Big Mama. Always knowing just what to do to set things right.
Ahmad tells the audience about how the family has a 40-year tradition of gathering every Sunday for dinner. All the women, mainly Mother Joe, prepare and cook the dinner, which consists of classic soul foods such as
Dumplings, deep fried catfish, macaroni and cheese, and sweet cornbread. The kind Big Mama used to make look like pound cake so his kids would eat it.
I have to say, this is one of the few movies that features food that actually looks appetizing. I got really hungry watching this movie. We meet Reverend, who is a total fucking creep. He likes to fill up all the young women and make jokes about having sex with them, and it's so funny, haha. This is sadly a very normalized thing in families. A lot of people have that one weird uncle who likes to hug you for just a little bit too long, or likes to make inappropriate comments about your body, and no one in your family really bats an eye because respecting your elders is always more important than your elders respecting your boundaries. Duh. Clearly not projecting or anything right now. The men, by the way, sit in the living room watching sports and don't contribute in any way possible. This is another one of those moments where I can't even be mad at the movie for portraying what is so accurate for a lot of families on the holidays. We learn that the family has an Uncle Pete who never leaves his room for some reason but always eats the food they leave outside of his door. While the girls are in the kitchen cooking, Terry continues to complain about how she's an ATM, automatically Terry's money, which is pretty good. There's a moment where Mother Joe burns her arm on the stove but doesn't seem to notice at first, and that's when we learn that she has diabetes because, according to Maxine, hasn't been watching what she eats. Her words, not mine. We will come back to this later. During the first dinner scene, Maxine childishly throws shade at her sister for not knowing how to cook.
No, Miss Terry, we know she can't cook nothing. Ain't that right, man? That's why you always had me cooking, huh?
We learn that not only is Terry on husband number 2, she also doesn't have children. And in 1990s language, that means she's a miserable ball buster who focuses too much on her career. Maxine and Terry have a strained relationship due to the fact that Maxine stole her boyfriend while they were on a date, and that boyfriend ended up becoming Maxine's husband and father to her children. We're definitely coming back to that. Kenny, being nosy and kind of rude, asked Lem why he got locked up, and Lem says that it was because he got caught selling drugs. While Maxine and Terry are arguing, Cousin Faith shows up to the house. It is clear immediately that all the women can't stand her, and at first it seems to be because Faith used to be a stripper, but we learn later that part of the reason they don't like her is because Faith is kind of a flake. And the Reverend doesn't even hesitate to grope her, like he just does it in front of everyone. It's so creepy. Maxine then goes into labor. Fast forward to Mother Joe learning that she will have to get her leg amputated because there's no blood circulating. But she insists that she's not getting her leg cut off.
Nobody's cutting off my leg. And that's that.
Later on in the movie, Samuel shows up at Bird's place of work and gives her an expensive bracelet while shading her husband for not being able to buy her things like that. Lem shows up at Maxine and Kenny's house and tells Kenny that he got fired from his job because he lied about his record on the job application but is afraid to tell Bird about it. And then we get this scene that was totally 100% not written by a man.
Nah, you don't want to tell a woman.
A black woman.
Especially a black woman. You ain't got a J-O-B. It's all right for them to lie around the house, but let a man...
A brother.
Especially a brother. You could be fixing the caps underneath the kitchen seats or
watering the plants.
Washing the dishes.
Taking the garbage out.
No matter what you do around the house, they still gonna consider you
a trifling nigga.
Definitely not written by a man. While Ahmad is at Terry's house for dinner, we learn that while Miles is a lawyer, he secretly yearns to launch a music career with his band, and that Terry deeply opposes this, playing on the old trope of lawyer characters secretly hating being lawyers. Because as a wise man once said,
"Don't be a lawyer. Don't do it. Quickest way to ruin your life."
Big Mama eventually decides to get the surgery, but she unfortunately suffers a stroke during the procedure and ends up in a coma. During the next scene, we see Lem in an interview, and this scene is just so funny to me. The interviewer barely says anything and just stares at him with this look of pure disgust on his face. It's so cartoony. While in the hospital, Maxine talks about having Sunday dinner, and Terry criticizes her for even thinking about Sunday dinner while their mom is in a coma. This ends up causing a rift in the family. Ahmad tells us that the 40-year family tradition was broken when no one but Bird, Lem, and the Reverend show up for Sunday dinner. Ahmad tells Big Mama that everything is falling apart. Faith goes to the club where Miles performs with his band Milestone, which I think they could have come up with a better name than that. She praises his performance and asks him about his passion for music, but every time she asks him to talk about the music, he just ignores her.
Oh, you really want to pursue your music full time, huh? I heard you and Terry talking.
Your man's looking over here.
Faith tells him that she really wants to dance and she isn't into the straight job thing. Who is? If you've never seen a movie before, you'll be shocked to learn that they fuck later. Bird sneaks into her mom's house and she catches Lem getting out of the shower. He finally admits that he lost his job, and can I just say, I think it's really insulting that Kenny encouraged him to lie to his wife about getting fired. Like, do you think Bird is fucking stupid? She would have figured it out eventually when it was time for her to pay the bills. Like, what was his plan exactly? Lem tells her that
it's about this stupid-ass bullshit system. They lock you up and expect you to do something better with your life, but when you get out, there ain't nothing better, because the crackers that got everything don't give you a second chance.
Then Bird says this.
You know what? That white man shit is old, and I'm sick and tired of niggas using that shit as an excuse.
Put a pin in that. Bird offers to help him get a job, but he says that...
Bird, I don't need your help. I can find my own damn job.
Okay, but you just told her that you couldn't find your own damn job, so what are we talking about here? Faith gets an audition for something. I can't remember. She asked Miles at the last minute to play her some music for the audition, and even though they did not have time to rehearse anything and she has no idea what he's going to play on the piano, she somehow dances perfectly to it because movie. I'm not sure how he's doing all of that by himself on the piano, but whatever. Samuel comes back to the salon where Bird works, and she tries being extra nice to him because she needs a favor. In the next scene, Lem comes home and sees Bird all dressed up in lingerie, appearing to already know why he's so happy. He tells her he got a job, and he talks about how he's the man, and they have sex. Samuel, being the asshole that he is, shows up at Lem's job during lunch and dickishly tells him about how he and Bird used to date, and makes a comment about her body, and then... Another very funny moment, I'm sorry. The way he hits him with the lunch tray and how he just falls back is so fucking funny. Lem, of course, loses his job, and then... You know how when a man's pride is stolen and he just turns into the Hulk? Super normal stuff. Lem aggressively manhandles her, screams in her face as Bird is crying because he presumed that Bird slept with Samuel to help get him a job, but Bird tells him that she only agreed to go to dinner with him. He throws shit and screams at her to stay the fuck away from him. Terry hears about the commotion and calls their cousin Blimp to come and beat him up. Ahmad, for some reason in the narration, says that Terry falsely assumed that Lem beat up Bird and that...
So, Terry was calling in Cousin Blimp to whoop Uncle Lem's ass, all because she thought Lem had beat up Bird. Big misunderstanding.
How is it a misunderstanding? He grabbed her, pushed her against the wall, and screamed at her. No, he didn't literally beat her up, but he was still very aggressive with her because he doesn't know how to just talk to his wife like a fucking adult. I have 2 sisters, and if that were my sister, I would have done the exact same thing. This part of the movie just... I hate this part of the movie. I really fucking hate it. Lem goes to a bar and gets drunk with what money? I couldn't tell you. Cousin Blimp hits him over the head with a bottle and they try to jump him, but Lem pulls a gun on them. Lem is then arrested for this. Later on, Miles and Faith get drunk, have sex, and are unknowingly witnessed by Terry. The next scene shows the family at Maxine's house for her and her husband's 11-year wedding anniversary party. Terry sulks in the kitchen and Kenny sees her and tries to comfort her. Terry tells him about how she's always envied that he and Maxine are still together and wonders what could have been if they'd gotten married. Miles, Bird, and Maxine enter the kitchen to talk about who's going to pay for their mom's medical bills. Terry suggests they put up the house to help pay for it and put Uncle Pete in a home. And then we get this iconic moment.
Fuck the family! I let the family in my house. You know what? The family fucked my husband. Yeah, Faith fucked my husband.
Terry comes at him with a knife and then at Faith before breaking down in tears. Faith cries and apologizes, and Bird, being the only human being with feelings, comforts her sister. Ahmad goes to visit his grandma one last time. Big Mama wakes up and asks him if the family is a mess, and he says yes. She tells him that her soul is tired and eventually passes. The family attends her funeral. Maxine returns to the house to see that Terry has already put the house up for sale. And when she goes inside, she sees Uncle Pete outside of his room sitting at the dining table. Maxine tells him that Big Mama died. However, Uncle Pete appears to have dementia or Alzheimer's because he keeps referring to her as her mom, Jo. Terry, Maxine, and Bird meet up for coffee to talk about the house. Maxine and Bird file an injunction to stop the sale on the house, and Terry, not wanting to argue, just leaves. Bird goes to the bathroom to throw up and then tells Maxine that she's pregnant, and then this infuriating scene happens.
No, Bird. But you can't call your ex to help your husband find a job behind his back. A man has to be a man, and if he feels that you take that away from him, he has nothing.
Are you fucking kidding me? So Bird is the one in the wrong for trying to help her shitty husband get a job? Whether or not you agree with what Bird did, Lem barging into her job, breaking the door, grabbing her, pushing her against the wall, and screaming at her was totally unnecessary and ridiculous. He could have just, I don't know, talked to her. I understand on some level why he was angry and embarrassed, but he's the one who hit Samuel with the lunch tray because he said Bird had a Coca-Cola shaped body. Maybe Lem is the problem here. Maybe he needs to work on his anger a little bit and learn how to handle human interactions a little better. But no. He couldn't possibly do that. We're talking about a man's pride here, everyone. Fuck if her feelings were hurt. Why should anyone care about that, right? Oh, but don't worry, you guys. The scene somehow manages to get worse.
Like with Mama. You remember when Daddy went and lost all that money gambling? Remember?
Yes.
She didn't trip. She just did what she had to do. And she left him with his dignity. You see what I'm saying? Men need that.
Take it from Maxine, ladies. If your husband gambles all your money away because he has a gambling addiction, don't be a bitch and call him out for it or be understandably angry about it. Bottle up those feelings so that he can keep his dignity. According to this movie, that's the only thing that matters. Terry, feeling guilty about what happened to Lem, calls in a favor to help him get released from jail for some reason. Ahmad tries to plan a victory dinner with the whole family, but since everyone in the family hates each other, he comes up with a scheme to get them all to the house on Sunday. He lies about there being some secret family loot somewhere in the house and says that if they come to the house, he'd be willing to share some of it with them. I'm not sure why these grown adults believed a child, but here we are. Anyway, everyone shows up to the house and starts to realize that something isn't right. Lem shows up to the house and Bert sees him and gives him a hug. Doesn't demand an apology or anything. They just hug and kiss and act like nothing happened. The women, of course, cook all the food and everyone sits down for dinner, awkwardly eating and not saying anything to each other. Lem tells everyone he got his job back, and Terry reveals that it was her who helped him get out of jail, and then...
Actually, I called a friend of mine at the DA's office for a favor. I felt bad.
Well, you should feel bad. Because of you, I had to spend weeks in jail.
I'm sorry, what's happening right now? Terry just told you that she helped you get out of jail, and you can't even say thank you? Everyone gets mad at her because they feel she's the reason he got arrested in the first place, which doesn't make sense because the reason he got arrested is because he pulled a gun on someone in a bar. That's not Terry's fault, Lem. That's your fault. Like, what the fuck? Everyone just constantly dogpiles on Terry, and it's so annoying. Terry and Miles talk about their marriage falling apart and how they haven't been happy for a while, and then Miles decides to excuse himself. Ahmad admits that he lied about the money because he wanted to bring everyone together.
It's not my fault, it's all y'all's fault. Y'all messed up the family. Can't you see that? Big Mama wanted me to get everyone together for a Sunday dinner. But I didn't know how to do that because all y'all do is fight. So I lied. Lied about the money so you come.
This scene is honestly so sad and realistic. I'm sure many people can relate to being a young kid in a complicated family where no one gets along and not really understanding why. The problems within this family aren't as simple as just, why can't we all just get along? But Ahmad is a kid, so I can't get mad at him for wanting everyone to just be chill. And can I just say, Brandon Hammond, who plays Ahmad, is probably one of the best actors I've seen in a movie. Those tears looked real, and he's adorable. A fire starts in the kitchen after Ahmad accidentally leaves a towel on the burner. The men run into the kitchen and try to put out the fire. Yeah, just keep hitting it with the towel. That should put it out. After the fire is extinguished, everyone rushes into the kitchen for some reason. Like, did y'all not practice fire safety in school? You're supposed to go outside so you don't inhale too much carbon dioxide. Uncle Pete comes into the kitchen and drops his TV, which is filled with the secret family money that everyone thought was a myth. And according to Ahmad, things got better after that, because money fixes everything, as we all know. Ahmad tells us that even though Terry and Miles got divorced, Miles still comes over for Sunday dinner, which, like, what? Why? That shit would not fly in my family, I'm sorry. You do not get to cheat on my sister with our fucking cousin and still be able to come over and eat our food. I don't think so. He tells us that Terry and Maxine are cool for now and that Bert and Lem got their own house and are expecting their first baby in the near future. The film ends with Ahmad thanking Big Mama as Mama by Boyz II Men begins to play over the end credits. The end. Alright, let's get to the main course.
Terry, you are not hurting because you gave Bird money for that shot.
I loaned her money, Max. As far as you're concerned, I'm an ATM. Automatically Terry's money.
So from my long overview of the plot, you probably gleaned that I am pro Terry. I got weirdly defensive of her, not because I think she's a good person, but because of the way she is written. From the beginning, we are meant to view her under a judgmental eye due to the fact that she has already been divorced once, is very dedicated to her career, and is childless. Divorce is obviously a lot more socially accepted now, but back in the day, it seems that if you've already been divorced once or twice throughout your life, it was a sign that you were broken as a person. Especially if you're a woman, it was seen as a failure that you can't even keep a man. That is very clearly the underlying message with Terry's character. There's also the fact that the film tries to reduce Terry's justified bitterness towards her sister stealing her boyfriend to petty grudge holding. Why can't she just let it go, is what we are meant to be asking while watching the movie. The movie also casts aspersions on Terry for being a career woman. Notice how Maxine, for example, appears to be a housewife and Bird works in a salon. Nothing wrong with working in a salon or being a housewife. Work is work, but Terry is a lawyer. She has a serious job. A job that makes a lot of money and a job that doesn't involve care or providing a service to others necessarily. She also makes a lot of money. Women having a lot of money is not really seen as desirable as it is with men. Terry being so lawyerly and opposed to any kind of fun is meant to explain why her husband eventually cheats on her. The film doesn't even condemn Miles's actions, but it condemns Terry for not doing a better job of being a good wife and for not noticing her husband slowly slipping away from her. We are meant to empathize with Miles. When Miles has sex with Faith, the moment is meant to feel inevitable and understandable. Not to talk out the other side of my mouth, I do think that Terry is a little harsh. Her blatant, unsupportive attitude towards her husband's passions is really mean. And I do find Terry constantly walking around with a stick up her ass to be very grating. She is deeply unhappy and desperately needs to go to therapy. She's clearly still harboring a lot of anger and resentment towards her family for always having to pay for everything and having to watch her sister live a happy life with the man that she met first. I also think the fact that Terry loves to rub her money and what she does for people in their faces isn't great either. One thing I can't stand is people who only do things for other people so that they can keep debts in their column, so that they can bring it up every single chance they get so that you never forget that you owe them or at least never forget what they've done.
After everything I've done for you
That I didn't ask for.
I find it to be really gross. I know so many people like this in my family where everything is so transactional. You start to wonder if they only do stuff for others so that they can feel good about themselves and make you feel smaller. Because Terry doesn't have to pay for everything, and yet she does, and then is mad about it. It doesn't make sense. Some may argue that she should pay for everything as she makes the most money, and their family isn't exactly sitting on a bunch of wealth. I would agree, but if I was constantly paying for people's medical bills and weddings and houses and it made me secretly hate my family, I would just stop doing that. I don't think people should do things that make them miserable. Another frustrating thing with her arc, or lack thereof, is that we never actually see Terry and Maxine make up or reconcile in any way. They never have a heart-to-heart or a sit-down to just talk about their feelings. I mean, I guess it's realistic in a way because people don't always work out their issues with their family, but it is disappointing that Terry never gets to just tell Maxine how she feels and why she's so hurt. Terry simply just isn't very well written. There's no closure to her plotline, and it doesn't seem like she learns anything. Same could be said for Bird and Lem. I really felt for Lem when he correctly explained how hard it is to even start over when the country you live in makes it difficult for people getting out of prison to even get a job. As much as I dislike Lem, he's not wrong about how he feels and how shitty things can be when you're expected to do better when you get out of prison, but aren't given the tools to actually do better. However, it's obvious that Lem takes that anger out on everyone, including his wife. I've already lamented about how insane it is that the movie tries to suggest that Bird is the one in the wrong for trying to help her husband, but I do think it's worth dissecting a little more. I personally believe that your feelings are your feelings. Everyone's feelings are valid, but it's always important to unpack those feelings. Lem feeling like less of a man because he can't get a job and that he would feel even worse if his wife helped him get a job is illogical, but it's valid. We live in a society that looks down on men who can't provide for their families and aren't buying their wives expensive bracelets. There's a scene where Lem talks about how he doesn't want people to think that he's living off of Bird. Again, a valid feeling. However, this is where Lem should probably do some unpacking. Bird is your wife. You guys are married. You are partners, and partners help each other. There's nothing wrong with your wife helping you get a job, especially if it means that everything won't fall on her. He didn't have a problem asking Kenny for help with a job, so this isn't really about help. It's about the fact that a woman is helping him. That's why that scene where Kenny and Lem are just bashing black women for wanting their men to have jobs felt very misplaced. It's like the writer of this film just wanted to complain about black women having expectations. This family isn't exactly rich. I'm not sure how much money Bird makes as a hairstylist, but probably not that much. Her being upset about him getting fired isn't solely about her seeing him as a
trifling nigga.
It's about her not wanting to take on that financial burden. This is part of why a lot of women get married, so that they can have some kind of financial stability. But I don't think Kenny and Lem's rant is totally unfounded. Women, especially black women, do internalize a lot of that patriarchal bullshit and probably do feel like a man who doesn't work is
a trifling nigga.
And when Bird dismisses the valid points Lem makes about the shitty system that aims to keep black people down, she doesn't seem to totally understand how hard it is for him. But I still think that scene was needlessly targeted at black women in a movie that already doesn't seem to care much about black women's feelings. As for Maxine, there isn't much to say. She's probably the most poorly written of the sisters. I feel like because we're meant to view the film through the eyes of her son, that we are also meant to side with Maxine. I had a hard time doing that. Not just because of what she did to Terry, but because she just seems really inconsiderate and childish sometimes. Like that scene where she just dunks on Terry for not being able to cook. It's just embarrassing to watch. Like, it's clear that she's also jealous of Terry on some level and that she enjoys making Terry feel like shit, but that's never delved into further. But somehow we're supposed to think that she's the strongest one in the family.
Mama always said that you were the strongest one in the family.
I beg to disagree. Alright, time for dessert, I guess.
You see, right there. That was just like Big Mama. Always knowing just what to do to set things right. I used to think she and I had a special connection. Like we shared an inside joke no one else was in on. Of course, it wasn't long I found out she had this same connection with all of us.
Despite how infuriating the plotline with Bird and Lem is, nothing is more anger-inducing than the way Big Mama is treated in this movie. You might think that's weird because she's supposed to be the heart of the film, or the soul of the movie, rather. Ahmad speaks so highly of her throughout the entire movie. She was the glue that held the family together. When she went into a coma, everything fell apart. Coincidence? I think not. At least that's what the movie keeps telling us. I think the treatment of Mother Joe is a lot more insidious, however, because Mother Joe is the only fat character in this film, and in typical fat character fashion, her story is a morality tale. She's fat, and she has diabetes, and she later dies. It's plain and clear. Now, the movie isn't overtly sending a message about the, quote, dangers of obesity, but it's still playing into anti-fat tropes. See, fat characters can only exist in films where they are either A, trying to lose weight, B, an incompetent lazy cop, C, the skinny main character's best friend with no plot, D, super insecure but then learn to become confident towards the end, or E, they exist as a morality tale about how bad it is to be fat. Think, What's Eating Gilbert Grape? There are certainly more tropes, but those are the main ones that I've noticed in my 24 years on this earth. There's actually two anti-fat tropes at play with Mother Joe. She's not just a morality tale, she also only exists to serve the other thin characters. She's the voice of reason, she's the problem solver, she's the one who cooks all the food that everyone in the family loves. She's caring and supportive to everyone in her family. That's all fine and great, but what do we even know about Big Mama as a person? She doesn't really have a storyline outside of suffering from a chronic illness, and she spends most of the movie in a hospital bed. Fat black women in movies are typically only really allowed to exist in roles of service. The only other time I really see fat black women on screen is when they're the sassy black nurse in a hospital. Big Mama isn't allowed to be sexual. She's not allowed to have goals or even flaws. She exists solely to take on the burden of everyone else's problems, to listen to everyone's problems without mentioning any of her own. When we learn that Mother Joe has diabetes, we also learn that she refuses to take her insulin. This isn't even about whether or not she can afford insulin, she just refuses to take it because she feels like she doesn't need it. This isn't uncommon among older black people feeling like they're too good for modern forms of treatment. However, what I took from this was that Mother Joe is so concerned with making sure everyone else is okay that she never stopped to put herself first. I think it would have been really nice if the movie touched on the ways black women in black communities are always taking on the role of caregivers and are always doing the work for everyone else, and how no one ever thinks to ask how they feel or whether or not they're okay with taking on this role. The movie also subtly blames Mother Joe for her diabetes. I'm not sure if this is the time to really get into the fucked up ways we talk about people, especially fat people with diabetes, or how diabetes is a very complex illness and we don't really know why people get diabetes. But Maxine telling her mom that she hasn't been watching what she eats is so fucking shameful. For one, it's weird because she eats the same shit that they eat. The only difference is that they're thin and non-diabetic and she's fat and diabetic. So it's easier for people to shit on you and your eating habits if you don't look healthy. It's just always gross when I hear the way people talk about people with diabetes and the victim blaming we do. The movie is kind of implying that Mother Joe did this to herself because she just wouldn't take care of herself or wouldn't watch what she ate. It's fucked up not just because that's a fucked up way to talk about people with a chronic illness, but also because all Mother Joe does is take care of everyone else. And then for no one to have any compassion for her is so odd. There's never a moment with Mother Joe where she talks about how she feels or whether or not having to take care of everyone's problems contributed to why she wasn't taking her insulin or whatever. I hate to say it, but at least Madea gets to express her anger. Mother Joe, once again in typical fat character fashion, is not allowed to be stressed or angry. She's meant to be a happy servant to all the thin people and their problems. I say all that to say that Mother Joe deserved better. Now, I know everyone is sick of reboots, but I would really like to see an updated version of this movie, preferably directed by a black woman. It doesn't even need to be a remake necessarily. I just think some of the things this movie brings up are still pretty relevant to today. The movie just doesn't do anything with these issues. The way this movie is written is as if Mother Joe ending up in the hospital is why everything in the family fell apart. Although it's clear from any adult's eye that the family was already kind of broken. But the movie isn't shown through an adult's eye, it's shown through a child's eye. Of course, a child would feel like everyone cooking food together and eating together means that everything is fine. Of course, he thought it was smart to invite the man who just cheated on his aunt to dinner, and that if Mother Joe would just wake up from her coma, she could fix everything. The problem is, Mother Joe never fixed anything. She put band-aids on things. In the beginning, when she intervenes and dances with Lem as to avoid Bird, Terry, and Maxine beating down that hoe, that's not her fixing the problem. That's her being conflict averse. The movie ends up with everyone eating food and finding a bunch of money. It's a seemingly happy ending because money is meant to solve everyone's problems. But no one's problems are actually solved or even addressed. Maybe that bothers me because it's almost too realistic. I can't tell you how many fights I've gotten into and witnessed in my own family that have never been resolved. Or how we just brushed it under the rug and then laughed about something entirely different while eating dinner as if we weren't just yelling at each other 10 minutes ago. Soul Food to me is a perfect representation of how families can be sometimes. It's complicated and frustrating and heartbreaking, and yet you still spend time with these people even though most of the time you can't fucking stand them. Whom amongst us can relate? It's a messy ass movie with some questionable morals, but I'd be lying if I said I don't still kind of love it. It's a classic in the black community for a reason. So, in conclusion, eat some soul food, sleep with your cousin's husband, and hit someone with a lunch tray. Happy holidays.
Amen. Amen. It's so good to be back here. I miss this place on Sunday. I've got my favorite food. You can't find this.
Well, I have a